Good evening,
Hello.
or hello, everyone.
Hello. Hey.
Depending on what time you're watching, it
We
could
don't
be
know.
evening, it could be
Yeah.
morning, but hello to you. My name is Kimberly Winborn. I'm joined by my co-hosts who will introduce themselves. I am the CEO and founder of Kimberly Winborn LLC and visionary of Coffee and Collaborations, as well as the founder of Beauty 180 Incorporated and executive director of Seasons Village Inc. I'm excited to be here tonight. Welcome to another episode of L.O.V.E Flow TV, and I'll pass the baton to my co-hosts to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Kenya Thompson. I am the owner of Wordcrumbs, which is a marketing firm that focuses on storytelling and just educating professionals on communication. And I also host Black Issues Forum on PBS North Carolina.
Hey, I'm your girl, Kimberly McGee, and I'm the owner of His Name Media Group, which owns the management firm and Fusion Now Dance. And I'm so excited to be here. Also, I won't forget the Robert Ann Foundation, which is named after my parents, giving insight to political through the arts.
Wonderful. So we welcome you to once again another episode of L.O.V.E Flow TV, where we are talking this evening about the color of money. We are talking, like I said, this evening, today, whatever time you're watching, about the color of money. And we want to empower you, ladies out there, but also the gentlemen, to understand that you do have a voice in your financial situation to create generational wealth, to do something a little bit different. But we're going to specifically talk statistics and facts in relation to the ladies, because so many things are changing in the demographic when it comes to our ladies. So if you've never watched L.O.V.E Flow TV before, I want you to go on over to Instagram and follow us at L.O.V.E Flow TV. Also on Facebook, we're at L.O.V.E Flow TV. We have a group. And then as well, you can follow and watch all of the replays of our shows through the YouTube channel at Coffee and Collaborations Media, which is the production company that houses L.O.V.E Flow TV. So we do not like to do anything at L.O.V.E Flow TV without first praying. So Kimberly McGee is going to lead us in a short prayer, and we're going to dive right into our topic, the color of money.
Yes. So one of the things we want to pray is, I think there's a scripture in Revelation 21:4 that says, God makes all things new. And we're just going to pray for new things, new mindset, and how we see money, how we structure money, and how we use money. Okay. So, Father, we thank you right now for your glory. We thank you for your ingenuity to help us be a good stewards of that which you've given us. Lord God, that we not be selfish in giving, but that we be mindful of that which you've called us to do. We ask that the ears will hear and the people will come and get knowledge and get wealth in their emotional wealth, as far as spiritual wealth, and also physical wealth. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Thank
And we do
you.
understand that there are so many different faiths, and the color of money has several faces. And so we want to be sure that you all understand that you are welcome here, no matter your race, religion, even sex, even though we're directing our conversation mostly to women, because we need to have this pivotal conversation in the middle of Financial Literacy Month. April is Financial Literacy Month. I'm super excited about that. Being a financial coach and certified financial education instructor, this is like one of my favorite months of the year. I don't know about you guys. I'm probably the
So
only
exciting.
cornball here.
Hey, it's these little things that our passions are connected to that fuel us every day. So while obviously I enjoy money and having it, may not be my passion, but totally understand why you are energized by this conversation.
I absolutely am.
Yeah, mine's is March. Mine's is Dance National Month. So that's why.
Well, we have to celebrate that next time, Kimberly. We got to be on here dancing or whatever we need to do to celebrate.
Yeah, National Dance Month. Yeah, so yeah.
Awesome.
But
Well,
you got to have money to go and dance. So it's
that
good.
part.
But when I
Money
travel,
rules
especially the
all
way that
things.
you like to.
money moves most things. So we need to talk about this. This is important that we
It
be
does.
wealthy in our mindset of how we manage our.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I have run into as a coach, a lot of people feel very burdened and bound. They don't feel a freedom when it comes to finances. They actually feel
Mm,
like they don't know what they're doing. They're lost in the sauce, as they say. And what we want to do is help people to understand you're actually probably further along than you could ever imagine. And there's also hope and possibility for you to create generational wealth for your family. You could be the person that starts something new in your family, right? And so
yeah.
that's what we want to talk about. So, the color of money, empowering women's financial freedom. It's like a beacon of inspiration and empowerment for women navigating the complexities of finance in today's world. And so, in this series, so we're going to start here and then I'm going to continue this series over at the Collaboration Culture podcast. And if the ladies want to join me, then I welcome them to continue this conversation designed to demystify the world of money, making it accessible and engaging for women from all walks of life. So, by intertwining financial wisdom with the unique challenges and triumphs of today's woman, this show aims not just to inform, but we hope to transform. So,
Yeah.
I want to first talk about the colors gold, bronze, green. A lot of times when you see something in relation to money, you think of green, right? You might
Hmm.
see blue, which is a color of trust, and green has a symbol of stability. Some people would say luck as
Yeah.
well. And I want
Yeah.
uh, to talk a little bit about the colors of money.
Yeah. I think, historically, gold has always been seen as a color that signifies money, right? I remember
Mhm.
growing up, my family was always like, no, only gold. Silver wasn't good enough, right? Because
Yeah.
gold was an indication as to your status. And so I think for years, gold has been like that symbol of abundance and
Hmm.
where you stand in society. So that's always, and that's played a psychological role in my head because I always wanted gold jewelry, but then I realized
Mhm.
I prefer silver jewelry and there's nothing wrong with that. But then I was like, well, white gold would be good too, right? Because
Hmm.
it's just that
Yeah.
play on
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
mental word gold. Yeah.
Right. And when you think about gold, when people think about reserves and
Hmm.
making sure to have some sort of like a safety net should anything happen and the dollar
Yeah.
totally becomes obsolete, many people have stacked up
Yeah.
pounds and
Gold
pounds and
bars.
thousands and millions of dollars of gold in reserve. So that's a good point,
Hmm.
Kenya.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think historically you can see it even throughout the Egyptians. Gold was definitely a symbol of status and abundance. And you can see that throughout history, no matter in what culture you look at. If it's Russian culture, Persian
Hmm.
culture, gold was that symbol that you have status or
Yeah.
wealth or position in society. But there are other colors that also show specific tracks of wealth when it comes to money. Red emulates the energy of brightness and power. Blue attracts wealth. It emits the energy of calmness, stability, as you had mentioned, and peace, because we need peace. Because you can
Hmm.
have a lot of money and have no peace.
Yeah.
So
That's
you can
the
be wealthy
worst.
instead, right? That's the
Yes,
worst, right, Kenya?
It's the
it
To be
worst.
is.
Yeah.
wealthy and have no peace,
Yeah.
Yeah. We see that
Donald
a
Trump.
lot too.
Hmm.
Donald Trump. Uh, Orange can attract wealth and prosperity. Gold, as we mentioned, attracts influence. We see this all the time. Fame,
Hmm.
Yeah.
fame is
A lot of the
always, I mean, a
Yeah.
lot of the
rappers and
rappers, they got the
Gold
gold
fronts.
chains,
gold
the gold
front.
Yeah.
chains.
Y'all remember
Yeah.
what was the rapper Flavor Flav with the big gold
Yes.
Yeah.
chain and the
Hmm.
clock around his neck?
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, when you even see it in movies, I mean, our Oscar is gold plated,
Yeah.
so it has the emulation. And even in the music industries, so everything, gold has that sense of fame when it comes to it. Brown, which I thought was interesting,
That's
also
interesting.
has an energy of financial maturity and
Mhm.
witnesses powers, resorts It's decor, and I thought this was, and I'm going to change my office. It says that the results of brown, if you decorate your office or home with this color, it brings a sense of financial maturity and understanding.
Hmm.
So I'm going to be putting
Mm.
some brown elements in my
Interesting.
office and in my
I
home.
got gold elements.
I've got gold elements, but I'm
Yeah.
bringing some brown, some root stuff in there.
Yeah.
Part of
Some
our
trees, something, some environment.
part of our logo. So our logo colors with Seasons Village has brown, green and brown.
Yeah,
Nice.
I
yeah.
love that.
And
Mm-mm-mm.
that's and financial meticulously, and you have to
Mm,
be able to, have that when you're dealing with wealth. Yellow expresses the positive energy, and the creativity, attracts opportunity and to earn money. Black, we already know, is the energy. And I think what I was reading is that with black you have to be real careful because there's a paradox between
yeah.
black, but the strength is prestige, intelligence, dignity. The pride is the problem because you could get really prideful and you can kind of show off. And so that's the power of black. And that's where the term, when a company grows, it says that we're in the black.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So that's where that term came from, was, when we say, how was your profit this year? Well, we're in the black and not in the
Yeah.
red. We're in the black. So
Yeah.
black has that sense. And then white goes back to ancient times, which I thought was interesting. Consider the color of energy, influence, and royalty.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
money and wealth has a color. It does have, and we know this regardless of what religion you are. Um, for us, God created all things. So color does matter, and the shades of color and combining these shades has a way of affecting us and how we operate our businesses, function in and out, and
Mm-hmm.
controlling and utilizing our money.
Yeah.
Mhm.
When I
It
think of the
does.
black too, I think of the black card and how that's like established. Like you could be proud of having the black card, and it says
Mhm.
that you're doing
Oh
something.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and
And I mean,
then
even when you
go
think
ahead.
about like having a black car, right? Most
Hmm.
limousines are black. Those are all statuses, like
Yeah.
status symbols. And black
Yeah.
has always been seen as like a regal or a respected color, it
Yep.
almost seems
Yeah.
like. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 And then if you look at white, when you're dealing about weddings and things like that, that is a symbol
Mhm.
in some religions, like that is a status of wealth, but it is also not
Mhm.
a hard status, like it's a
Mhm.
Right.
soft status. I will
Yeah.
tell y'all, the first time I ever saw a black card, I was on a date with someone, and I had never seen a black card before. And he
Mhm.
You
pulled it
got a black
out,
card? Oh,
and he pulled out a black card, and I was like, I was trying to be
oh.
dignified in my approach. I had to go to the bathroom and call my girlfriends. I said, "Girl, that was the
You
first time
got
I
a
had
black
I had not seen a black card." And
Okay.
he just, it was quite, he
Yeah.
owned a couple of gas stations, and it was quite
Mhm.
common for him. He just like slid it like that, and I thought,
Like it's
"Is that a
nothing.
black card I see?" Oh,
That's how you got to put it out too. Like, oh, let me just.
right.
I got
he
this.
just slid. He just slid across the table. I
Yeah.
was like, "Okay." I just didn't.
So
I played it off. I played it off, but I was
yeah. So the
impressed.
color of money is like you just said, Kim. All of those colors, and I think everybody, if you think about it as you're watching, can you relate when you see any of these colors out here in the world as you're shopping, as you're experiencing life?
Mhm.
How do these make you feel, and how can you relate it to your
Mhm.
journey when it comes to money, whether from childhood or now when it comes to money? You see how we had a story. So what's your story?
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
What do y'all think? What do y'all think about the breakdown of the color and money, and
I think it
how do you
makes
guys connect with that?
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about color theory, and this is going into like a more design and marketing
Mhm.
area, different colors evoke different emotions. And if you want to manipulate the minds with marketing, you use various colors to emote those emotions. So it makes complete sense that
Yeah.
these
Mhm.
colors mean the thing they mean, because if you look at color theory, there's a direct correlation to that.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it makes sense, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
It
do
makes me think
we?
of like the rainbow. The fact
Yeah.
that the fact that no matter what the color is, the primary thing is money is essential. And so whether it's red, whether it's blue, whether it's orange, gold, whatever the
Mhm.
color is, money has a significant place in our lives. And
Mhm.
so that's what that makes me think of. It makes me think of the fluidity of
Yeah.
money, the emotion attached to it, even, and just
Yeah.
because color and emotion go together as well. So it just makes it really elevates the dynamic nature of what money is. And I think of it
Mhm.
as like directing things, like
Mhm.
as a tool. I'll say that's
Mhm.
one of the things that I like to think of when it comes to money. So while it may be exciting and colorful and all of that, each of these has each way that we apply money is as a tool. So it can brighten our lives, it can dull out our lives, it can
Mhm.
flourish our
Mhm.
dreams and give us hope and all of that stuff, or it can actually hinder us, just depending on how we yield it. How do we use that tool? That's what it makes me think about.
Yeah.
I love
I
that you
agree.
said the emotion of money because I remember divorce. I was buying stuff that just made no sense whatsoever. And I was buying stupid stuff that I don't even
Mhm.
own now.
Yeah.
Like, and I
Yeah.
think about the amount of money I spent during that time
Hmm.
of just going through that depressional state
Yeah.
of and that was a pivotal moment for me. Also, when you talked about the emotion, Kim, and that's a responsibility. I didn't have the know-how at the time
Yeah.
to have that literacy that we're going to be talking about, that financial literacy,
Hmm.
to check my emotions so that I wouldn't find myself in what I call a spending hole, which
Yeah.
means that for me a spending hole is I've spent money and I have nothing to show for it. There's nothing
Hmm.
really tangible that I
Hmm.
could flip it, turn it around and use it for good, or
Mhm.
that it has profited me down the line, because that's how I think now. I
Yeah.
didn't have it at the time. And half those clothes that I bought at that time and them shoes, I can't fit it. So it's a
Yeah.
waste. I gave it away.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, you made a great point, because when you think about what we're talking about tonight, which is women and money primarily, a lot of women, we do end up making a lot of financial mistakes. And I want to say not just women, but because we are more emotionally driven in most cases than any other sex, then
Mhm.
we do sort of take our emotions and have a response and an action that accompanies that response as a result. So somebody might eat, for instance, because of
Mhm.
an emotion that they feel, in order to fulfill that emotion. So many people
Mhm.
spend in order to fulfill an emotion. It could even
Yeah.
be a good emotion. It could be, I'm excited, so I'm gonna go spend money and it's gonna help to balance me out. And so I have
Yeah.
harmony all across every area of my life, because it matches that emotion that I'm experiencing right now. But most
Mhm.
people are the opposite. So because they're trying to fill a void of sorts, a negative point in their life, or some sort of emotional burden, they will go
Mhm.
shop and they will spend excessively outside of a budget and all of those things. And it actually triggers a downward spiral in their finances. And so when we talk about
Mhm.
financial literacy, what that is having the education to understand how to achieve that financial freedom that we all are capable of having. What are the tools that you need in order to implement in order to achieve that? And so just like there's literacy and education is literacy, and you get math skills, you get taught, all of these different things that we have to have as our core. It's the same
Yeah.
thing when it comes to finances. And so that's what financial literacy means. And we got to understand that emotion can't drive it.
Mm. Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
This
I
is
like
true.
the fact that you said the emotion can't drive it, because for me, it's looking back, it was a regret of mine, because when we talked about the topic of generational poverty and in the
Mhm.
minority community, particularly when it comes to women, that I just not having that guidance at the time, and becoming a single mom, going from a dual income to a single income, back to a dual income, single income, which yes,
Mhm.
that means I've been married a couple of times. I learned the second time what I didn't learn the first time, which is great, but
Mhm.
it cost me the first time. It cost
Yeah.
me dearly the first time, just spending because there was a hole in that using it to get into therapy and doing the things, doing the work instead of just buying things that really had no value, no true value.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kenya, I would love to
Well,
hear your point of view on this, especially from someone whose family did not originate in the United
yeah.
States.
That's exactly where I was going. Thank you, Kimberly. No, I just remember a lot of conversations around money and the
Mhm.
scarcity of money and the
Yeah.
importance of saving money.
Mhm.
My dad is that person that would save money under a mattress for years because he was afraid of the financial institutions
Mhm.
and afraid of other people having access to money because he didn't grow up with money. So he worked very hard. Both my
Mhm.
parents did worked very hard to secure a future for us that they never had. And so it's, I think with a lot of immigrants, there's a mindset of work, 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 save, 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 save. And there isn't a lot of living life
Yeah.
because money was always such a scarcity for them. And there's a fear of going back to that lack.
Mhm.
And I think that in a way it was good to see that, but it was also, as with most things we're finding these days, was somewhat traumatizing, right? So then
Yeah.
you have this traumatic relationship with money now, because I'm afraid to spend it, but I have this workhorse mentality because I need to make it, and I'm afraid it's never enough, and it just, I don't know, it always
Yeah.
felt like is just never enough,
Y-
as a child of an immigrant.
that's such a good point. That leads me to this thought. There's another mindset or mentality of once you get it and you see your bank account stacked and all of that, like not doing anything because you're afraid to
Mhm,
see the numbers going down after all of that work. Have
mhm,
you out guys ever met anybody like that? Like they're successful, and they're doing very well, but they're very complacent and very tight with their money, and they won't even do investment opportunities or
mhm.
even focus on generational wealth because of the fact that they're afraid to lose what they've
Yeah.
worked so hard for. Anybody ever
Oh, yeah.
experienced?
I know a few people like that.
Yeah.
And you might want to on the outside call them stingy, but there is
Mhm.
a poor relationship with money in a way,
Yeah.
right? They've worked hard and they've saved and they've been diligent, but like you said, there's just such a need to hold on to it that's
Mhm.
not healthy in itself.
Yeah.
um
Money hoarding.
so, yeah, yeah. And I
Mhm.
mean, that's probably the best thing you can hoard.
Right.
but
Depending.
but
Well, just depending.
right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what are you doing? Like when you die, that
Mhm.
money essentially dies with you if you don't have a plan for it.
Right.
So, on the show, we talk about this all the time. People have assets that they don't even realize are assets and not leaving it behind. So we can kind of go into this like poverty, generational poverty in our community.
Yeah.
And you think about not keeping grandma's house. Kimberly, you were on that show when we talked
Mhm.
with Talib, and it was you and Tom,
Yeah.
where we talked about people are selling grandma's house far too often to these investors that don't care about your community, that
Mhm.
aren't investing back into your family. And so it's the same mindset of, okay, you saved, a few hundreds of thousands of dollars or however much money you've saved. But if
Mhm.
you don't have that in a trust or will or anything, I mean, you stand a chance of not having the generations to follow you
Mhm.
benefit from that. So
Yeah.
what's the point of hoarding it if you don't have a plan for it?
Right. And that, you just hit the nail on the head with the plan because a lot of times the older we get, the more health issues we have. And so you're holding on to this, haven't put it into anything to grow for you or create a
Mhm,
plan for the next generation. And then all of it gets eaten up with health issues. And
yes.
now the next generation is still paying your bills after you're long gone. And so,
Mhm,
to that point of how do we, especially as these women, us women, who are now making more money oftentimes than these men. Like, how can we change or are we already changing what
I
generational
think we're
wealth looks
starting
like.
to change. Yeah. I mean, I think
Yeah,
this conversation right here is just evidence because we've all three of us have been part of other conversations with this same
yeah,
topic. And so to go into the next section about educating and understanding what debt means and what wealth means, I think
mhm,
that's the first part is being that vehicle within our generation, within our friend group, within our families to start the conversation. That's number
yeah,
one. The
yeah.
education piece is going to be huge.
Yeah. So we could talk about the kitchen table for a second. Kimberly, I think you sort of lended to this a little bit with the emotional burden, the emotional conversation. But I think there's an emotion attached to even talking about our finances, right? And so
Mhm.
at the kitchen table, where some other demographics are talking about money openly, and so how do you grow it? How do you build it? What are you making? How do you invest it? All of those things at a lot of the kitchen tables for African Americans, people of color, those are very like private things. And
Taboo.
so there's an anger emotion attached to asking or bringing anything up when it comes to the conversation of money. And it could be because of ignorance. You know how people sometimes get angry when they don't have an answer, or I don't know what it is. What do you all think when it comes to that generational poverty and mindset and not having those kitchen table talks, and how those evolve into anger when, as a kid, you would bring that sort of stuff up?
I was gonna say for me, I think we've always had in my family, we always had those kitchen table talks. However, they were shrouded in secrecy too.
Mm,
For instance, like we would have the conversation about, you know, we got funeral arrangements taken care of. I've got my plot taken care of. So I financially, you guys won't be burdened with that. But then there's this shroud of secrecy about how much money grandma actually really had in her bank account and
hmm.
how much did she even have a full, like at that time it wasn't a 401k, it was a pension because
Pension,
401ks didn't
yeah.
even come into the mid 80s. So and the 401k concept was really to save, to help the average man get investments and learn how to manage long-term goals. And so pensions kind of slid away because
Now let's
people couldn't
talk
make
about the
money
real
if it.
401ks were for companies to make money off your investments,
Money,
but
right,
Right,
well, yeah,
right.
but to make it easier for,
right,
Yeah.
they sold it so that you could feel like
Right.
you make more money investment, but really the company was like, "We'll match this," and it was just a
Well,
way for them to
yeah,
use your money.
pretty
But
much.
in my grandmother's thing, it's like, oh, they would say, "Well, we got retirement," but they would never tell you how much retirement, and
hmm,
so it was always shrouded in secrecy. What I was determined to do with my children was to take it a little step further, is to show them my mistakes, particularly when I became a single mom, when I've
hmm,
made financial mistakes, show them that because it had affected us in a way where there's certain things they were not, we just couldn't afford at the time. So I had to
hmm,
come clean, which really checked
Mhm.
me too of how I wanted to present myself to my children so they could understand what not to do with money and what to do. And then
yeah,
opening them up a bank account, taking them to the bank, giving them an allowance, expressing to them, this is what you give your 10% this, you put
right,
this away, and then show them how, when they wanted to purchase something, okay, you want to purchase this, let's weigh the cost. You
yeah,
have this, and if you spend it on this, this is how much you would have left. So the next thing you want to get, when it's this, if you just wait a little longer, this price will go down, and then you may be able to purchase both at the same time. So I was having that table talk with my children, and I
hmm,
see that in them now. They've made mistakes along the way in their 20s, and they're gonna still make mistakes because that's their life. But
absolutely,
I've always found I take very great pride in my children when they said, "Oh yeah, I'm not happy with how much savings I have, or not seeing my investments really. I need to make some changes." And so some of that has stuck with them, and I'm very proud about that because that was
yeah,
a
and that
that was a really lean time for us.
I think
Mhm.
about three principles that I like to focus on, which is long term vision, delayed gratification and the power of compounding. And, as we're talking about women, and you brought up a major thing that I want to talk about, being a single mother and raising children with financial understanding in order to be able to go out here and make good decisions. So we're talking about education. Single mothers in North Carolina with an associate's degree are 44% less likely to live in poverty than those with a high school degree. And if you go up to the next level, bachelor's,
Mhm.
single mothers in North Carolina with a bachelor's are 71% less likely to live in poverty than those with a high school degree. And so the more education we have, we see that more women are making money. So you have single mothers who are able to, through education, and you just talked about your children and how you educated them. And then I know that Jasmine has extensive education, and we do want our children, and not that your son doesn't, but we talking about the women.
Yeah.
We talking about the
Right,
women.
right. Yeah.
But every level that we go up, there is an opportunity to increase our income. Now, we don't have to always go to college. It could be a certification, continued
Mhm.
certifications. So the point is, once we know better, let's hope we do better. And no matter if you're a single mother or if you're in a home where you have a spouse accompanying you, the stats are the stats. And this came from the Institute from Women's Policy Research. When
Mhm.
parents have a post secondary education, their children have an increased likelihood of obtaining that, which continues to support what we're talking about here,
Yeah.
generational wealth. And so
Right.
And
that, to the conversation of Kenya, we brought up education, debt, and wealth. It was one of the reasons I love the nonprofit that I work for, is because investing in these single mothers is directly impacting the trajectory of
yeah.
the next generation.
And I think, going a little bit back to the question that you asked about the anger around asking the question,
Yeah.
I think we were conditioned to not talk about those things during slavery,
Hmm.
post slavery times, because there was a jealousy that would be created if
Mhm.
someone knew that the person next door had a little more money than
Hmm.
us. Like, how is that possible, right? And so I think that secrecy and conversation started then. I think some of the anger came from shame of not doing the things that they needed, or wasn't able to do the things that they should have done to acquire the money that should have been acquired. So I think that those have trickled down, obviously, into today's society, as to, we don't understand why we're not talking about money, but
Hmm.
those are the subconscious reasonings that have been bred through us over time that causes us
Yeah.
not to have these conversations. So I think if we
Mhm.
realize where the birth of that feeling came from, then we can, because obviously we don't live in that time anymore. At least
Mhm.
we're not supposed to be
Right.
living in that time anymore.
That mindset,
um,
but that mindset
right, that
exists.
Yeah.
mindset. If we realize where that comes from, we can start to shed that, because we
Mhm.
Absolutely.
obviously know that we're not in that space anymore. We are
Hmm.
doing, men and women are doing so well for themselves. Black
Hmm.
men and women are doing so well for themselves that we no longer have to have these secret
Right.
conversations, and it should be a more open conversation with family. And I love what McGee has done with her kids. I try to do the same
Hmm.
with mine.
Me too.
Um, and I think our children are going to be game changers in
Me
so
too.
many areas,
Absolutely,
right? Not
absolutely,
just
Yeah.
yeah.
finance, but
Yeah. But when you talk
because we're
about
parenting different.
slavery and our matriculation from that point,
Hmm.
I know that as Black women in America, we were at the bottom of the barrel when it came to
Hmm.
opportunities, especially
Yeah.
jobs. And
Yeah.
teachers were the first, like, well respected group of
Hmm.
people that were able to sort of, have a voice when it
Yeah.
came
Mhm.
to women's rights and all of those things. And so I do believe that the more we educate our children, like, you're talking about Kimberly and Kenya, like you're talking about, we're doing with our children, the more we help them to understand that there's actually freedom in
Hmm.
Mhm.
education. And it doesn't have to, like I said, I'll say this again, because I think a lot of times people, when you think of education, you think of college, but there's so many ways to educate ourselves outside of college that will help
Mhm.
us as a community of women, and also that intersection of, people of color to grow. And so
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons. I think we've all pointed on several reasons why people of color have, sort of been having emotion behind
Mhm.
money, and jealousy and
Yeah.
all these different
Mhm.
feelings, even with the house in versus
Mhm.
the field in, and that
Yeah.
hierarchy.
I think too, it's important that, especially in the Black community, that we do. I think to add to Kenya talking about the historical references and significance of the conversation about not sharing, it's also the stigma that came with, if you did make a little money, people would say you think you're better than everybody else. So there was
Hmm.
always that stigma. There's a great documentary about the Black, what they call the Black Martha Vineyards, and
Yeah.
it was the upper crust Blacks who came from the North who went to Martha Vineyard, and they were really looked upon in a very disgusting way. And even in the documentary, a lot of what they call blue collar worker, black workers, felt that they were disgusting because they felt like they segregated themselves based on their wealth and their status. But isn't that the conversation, or the stigma that goes along in the Black community even now? We don't really look at wealth in a more substantial way. We look at wealth in a more status way, not a substantial way, but in a status way. So if you got a bigger house, if you got the car, if you got the this, and
Hmm.
it's flamboyant, that's the status way. But
Hmm.
Right.
there's a sense of understanding wealth in a substance way, which means I don't necessarily have to have the big house, which is nothing wrong with that. We shouldn't shame uh, another family or another group because they want the status. But I think there's something to be said about having the substance of wealth, that you don't have to have all the flashy stuff, but you can still be just as wealthy and do things differently. But I think in our community, historically, it's been a division for various reasons. There's layers and layers and layers of why that is.
Well, I think
But I
Mhm.
that
think
goes
too,
back
it
to
go.
the house. I was talking about the house in word
Oh
versus
yeah,
the.
oh yeah,
I
oh
think it
yeah,
starts way
oh
back.
yeah,
Like, when
oh
it comes
yeah.
to status, because
It's
that
dividing
person,
con. It's the
you can
status,
look
right? Yeah.
down on a
Hmm.
person because you have
Right.
a different opportunity.
Hmm.
I definitely agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I
But some people don't even have it. Like, when you talk about a solid foundation, a lot of people that are focused on status a lot of times don't even have as much as those who are not. It's that emotional need to
Mhm.
feel, like you're worth something,
yeah.
that makes people floss, and a lot of times they're actually going into debt to floss.
Mhm.
Well, dealing with women and the dollar, and maybe this is just me as an outsider, and of course me getting to a certain age, I'm always leery of anybody online, social media wise,
Hmm.
TikTok. I don't care what social platform. I'm always leery when I see any woman, I don't care what ethnic group she comes from, that she looks so well put together and there's a sense of status. And then she's teaching people about wealth and bringing it together and having it all together. I don't believe it. Like, I just feel like there's a sense of a miss, and this is just me. I'm always my third eye is always on that person because
Hmm.
I really feel like that some of that is for show. I want to see somebody, and I want to talk to you, Kimberly, about your book, The Debt Detox. And not to compare apples to oranges, but I think there's a sense of educating people and doing it in a way that doesn't always have to be about showing you have to have a car. I'm walking through in front of my mansion and blah blah blah. I really feel like it could be a misconception of what wealth really could be for certain people. And I'm
I think
always
it's those are credibility symbols for
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
I think people feel like they can't talk about it unless they show it. That's where that mindset is warped.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
yeah,
That's
I think
true,
that that's just a
because
credibility symbol.
people have
yeah.
told me through, like, and I don't know if this has happened to you all as business owners, But when it comes to like wanting to build a book of business, people would tell me like you need to get a luxury model car, you need to carry a Gucci, Louis Vuitton, all these different name
Mhm.
brand bags. Make sure you go buy some red bottoms, all these
Mhm.
different things people have told me through the years because you want to look a specific part, even if you don't have it. That's literally what I have been told. And
Yeah.
so I don't subscribe to that.
I
I
agree.
personally don't subscribe to that, but it is back to, what Kenya was saying and the, continuation of this conversation. It is something that people do in order to, like you said, get status, to look like you are reputable, and that maybe I should reach out to you because you have a BMW, you have a Range Rover, or all these different things that people symbolize from luxury as money. So
Right,
I should
right,
listen
right.
to you because you have all of this.
Yeah, I don't care for it. And like you, Kimberly, I mean, you two know this. I drive used cars, and I have always have. Like people have said to me, why don't you get a new car? Well, I finally got one, and I
Mhm.
still got a car note, and I hadn't had a car note in 34
Right.
years. Hadn't had a
Yeah.
car note in, yeah, over the age of my daughter, and I hate car notes, but I
Mhm.
decided to do it for myself, not for status, but for the simple fact is, okay, Kimberly, you're now really grown. Go ahead and get your car. Stop.
Yeah.
But I was like, you can't really. People were like, oh, I didn't know you owned your own business, and yeah, but I also have yeah, depreciation. Do you understand the depreciation of a vehicle when it comes off the lot? Like, that's
Mhm.
not a good investment. Like, I'm looking at diversifying my finances. And the first thing I went and did when I got myself serious, coming from a dual income to a single income before I became a dual income again and got remarried, was I went out and got me a financial advisor.
Mhm.
And I was a single parent at the time. And I was petrified to go and talk to my financial advisor, who is still my financial advisor to this day. I was petrified because I didn't have a lot of money, but I knew I only had $1,500 and I didn't want to waste it like I did before. So I wanted to make sure I capitalized on the 1,500, and I educated myself talking about that. I didn't have the debt detox book back then, but if though as well, but it was one of those things that I went out and made sure I educated myself. I've made failures throughout the years of understanding wealth and stewardship and being, listen, it has impacted my children to the point my son is in banks. My son is my son works at a bank. So it has an impact on my family in different various ways. So yeah,
Mhm.
I think it's important for us to definitely talk about, that. And, because we women, we do have now the power of the dollar, but
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
would love for us to see us use it. I don't know, not with harsh judgment, but with concern, in a more
Yeah.
productive and powerful way, other than like you were saying. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with the red bottoms or the car, but
Yeah.
the value of status and substance, I think we have to weigh those two.
Right.
Well, let's talk about women and the power that we have with money. I think
Mhm.
statistics have shown for a while now that women in general, but especially Black women, are the breadwinners in the family, right? We bring
Yeah.
in most of the money now, which wasn't always the case. And
Mhm.
so, how do you think that affects? I mean, I, I kind of know the answer because we've done research in this space.
Yeah.
We see more women are being single, not getting married. Is that affecting relationships, children,
Yeah.
families? Like, what are your thoughts on what that's doing to our Black families in particular?
No, I think it definitely is. And so the gone are the days where so a lot of times when a woman is successful, a man will call her type A. And we've had this conversation here. A man will call her type A. He will say that she's independent. She act like she doesn't need a man, all that stuff. And a lot of men cannot deal with a woman that makes more than them, not at all. But then I was talking with a client of mine just yesterday or the day before who said she wants her husband to become the breadwinner again. She's making more money than him right
Mm,
now. And I was like, well, is he financially sort of astute to be able to manage the finances in the home? Is that why you say that? She said no, but it just changes the dynamic in their household
Mm,
as
Yeah.
husband and
mhm.
wife when she makes more than he does. It's, and I think a lot of times men do feel that a woman feels like she's greater than, or she's boss, or
Mm,
whatever whenever
mm.
he's making less. But then I know a lot of men who don't have a problem
You
with
don't
that at
care.
all, and whatever
Yeah.
works for the
Mhm.
family
Well,
works
I
for
Yeah.
also think
everybody.
I think it's a large part in how the woman approaches the relationship. Just because you make more money doesn't mean that you now make all the decisions or you're
Right.
the head of the household, right? And
Hmm.
so maybe that's more of a traditional view of letting the man lead, even though
Yeah.
he may not be the breadwinner, but he is the head of your household,
Hmm.
right? If that's how you see marriage. I
Right.
think a lot of us still do see marriage in that way, and that despite how much I make, my husband
Hmm.
is the head of my household. We make
Yeah.
decisions together, but he is that voice, right?
Yeah.
That sounding voice. I don't know what you think, McGee.
Well, I was going to talk about the book Women, Money, and Power by Josie Cox. It's a really, really good book. And she is a financial journalist, and I've watched her on different platforms. But her book is really compelling because it talks about the financial freedom that and the social political hurdles that women have got to deal with on a regular basis
Hmm.
that men don't have to deal with. Like
Hmm.
women every single day. In her book, she references the I mean, women have to deal with, and this is not a oh woe is me violin. This is this is true. Women have to deal with the financial hurdles that men don't have to deal with, being underpaid, being
Mhm.
undervalued at work, taking on double loads when a man would never do it at work. She's afraid to not do it because she could be a one income family, right? Or and that one income family means that she may have a spouse at home, but she's making more than her spouse does. So I think just all of those hurdles as women, it is compelling that there's a rise and a fall in our economic system, that equality still is not fair. And we as women can't even be successful in a position of making more money without feeling like we are causing
Yeah.
our mates to be inferior of us, when really it shouldn't matter. But traditionally, we're given a mindset to say, I can't make more money than him, and then he be okay with that.
Yeah.
Well,
Like
I think too,
that's
like
very
the way
difficult.
many people are going into relationships is very I and I. Like
Hmm.
I'm
Mm,
bringing this certain amount to the table, so I should be able to blah blah blah. And then
Well,
there's the like, oh well, we need to split everything 50 cents. So
I
the
was just gonna
50%, so
say,
that's the
yeah.
I and I. Like,
What do
so
you guys feel
I'm
about joint bank accounts?
yeah,
I'm,
nobody's
I'm
really
for
trying to
I'm for
Are
it.
you into that? Yeah,
nobody's
I'm
trying to
for
do that
that.
anymore. Say
No,
what?
I don't understand having separate bank accounts when we have one household.
I
Like
No,
I
I
don't
I
like
can
a
have,
understand.
joint bank account.
Yeah.
If it
yeah, I
works,
like a
now
joint bank
if
account,
yeah, if
but
you
you need
have
to have your
someone
separate. You need
I
to
if
mean,
have
you
your
have
sure,
separate to
you
someone
have
though
your
that
function.
is
petty
not
cash,
okay,
but
we
that's
all
not the
talking.
main. I think we're both all passionate about the same
Yes,
subject.
yes.
But I just feel like if we have one main account where everything comes out of, and sure, I have play money, but that's not the
Mhm.
majority of my money. The majority
Right.
of my money is in our joint account.
Well,
That's my
But
thought.
statistically,
I
couples can
mhm,
build together if they would have that mentality, and they would go further in
yeah,
their aspirations for their family. However,
yeah,
that's the I and I mentality. Like, okay,
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
making 100,000, you only making 50,000. I
hmm,
can't trust you to bring our 150 together, and so that's what people. That's how people operate. Unfortunately, I was watching a
hmm,
show where the people sat down and they started talking about their finances and how they're going to operate. And I almost fell over. The guy was like, now, you asking this woman to marry you? He was like, well, I just, and he said it with like such pride. I'm thinking, yeah, we'll go 50% on, all the bills. Like, and she was like, do you mean percentages or do you mean half? Because how can we base that on if I'm only making this and you're making that, how can we do percentages? Because that means that, and so we're more so thinking of an individualistic view
hmm,
instead of a holistic view where the family comes
hmm.
together and builds and grows. So
Right.
Well, I've been in both places. I've been in where I made more money than my first husband, and then my second husband, he made more money than I did. And so the dynamics were different. Here's the two reasons why. One, I was super young. So we really didn't have anything when we first started. So we were building from scratch.
Mhm.
And so it made sense to us that our checks went into one account. We paid all the bills. Whatever was left, we divided it. Because we were really pretty much on the same playing field in my mindset, because we really didn't have much.
Mhm.
The second go around, he made more money than me. So we discussed he would take the harder bills, which was the more bills that had a lot of the weight, the mortgage, the two car payments, and then I would manage the household,
Mhm.
electricity, groceries, clothing, blah, blah, blah. And then anything else that and then we both would take 10%, no matter what 10% was more than the other. We understood that the 10% would go into savings.
Mhm.
It didn't matter. We came to that.
Right.
Now that I am almost 55 or 55,
Mhm.
um, and I if I do ever get married, that's not going to be substantial for me. I think that I will only do a dual account if we decide that what our households needs to run functionally, and we put that money in. So say if our household operation was $5,000, then we would need to decide how we would make sure $5,000 got into that account. And I'm not going to count your coins and you're not going to count mine. Like, and I would be okay with that. Um, but you are my husband. And if I find myself in a shortage, I'm expecting you to come in and be my husband and vice versa. And I'm hoping that because I think depending on where you are in the stage of your life, your experiences, and so on and so forth, it does have an effect on you of how you would divide the money and how you would manage it. But I
Mhm.
am for dual account. I think it's sensible. I think it makes sense. And then you have a little play money you save. But the key thing is going back to what Kimberly said is I think it was you, Kimberly, when you mentioned about having the same mindset and the goals, that what is our overall goal? What is our overall target? Is to get out of debt, stay out of debt, plan for our older years, plan for college, plan like what are our goals as a couple coming together? What are our goals? And then how do we do that?
So when you're saying you're for dual accounts, you meant joint, right? You meant
Joint account.
you're
Yeah, like dual
you're
account. Yeah,
okay,
joint
like
account.
coming
Yeah.
2 to 1. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. Okay, we talking about the female dollar again, and
Right.
how things are changing, right? So I'm thinking of an example of the power of the female dollar, and who runs the world? Girls. I'm gonna just say that.
Girls,
But
we
like
run the
when you
world.
go
Yes.
to like a car dealership, for instance, and they look at you in certain situations, not just car dealerships, houses, different spaces, like you don't know what. I don't know. Have y'all run into this? You don't know what you're
Yeah.
Oh
talking
yeah.
about. They try to act like you
Oh
are
yeah.
so simple when it comes
Yeah.
to trying to sell you things and all of that. But women are
Yeah.
like, no,
Mhm.
you need to show.
Yeah.
I need
You
this contract. I need. What'd you say? Can you?
listen. I was just gonna say, I drive a pickup truck, so you'd be
Yeah.
surprised. Like when I come in for anything with my, oh, where your husband? This is my truck. Like
Right.
it's always
Right.
like I I may make more money, but I can never have the same respect as a man though
Yeah.
in
Mm-hmm.
these
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
spaces because they just don't
Mm-hmm.
equate it to they may
Mm-hmm.
value my money, but they don't
Mhm.
value my knowledge. And that's frustrating.
Yeah, I'm reading a book about that, like how men and women, because women do it too to each other,
Mm-hmm.
need to
Mm-hmm.
understand the female as a customer and the value
Yes.
of really targeting the beauty of the, because the women, people historically say women spend all the money, right, in the household, and women are the downfall of the the finances. But when you really think about it, and this is what the book goes into, and why people should really take away that stigma, and then also realize the power of a woman. We are the ones that are usually buying the gifts. We're the ones usually
Mm-hmm.
handling the groceries. A lot of the things when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to
Mm-hmm.
money, taking care of
It's
parents
us.
and all of that, even
Mm-hmm.
when it's your
Mm-hmm.
husband's mother or father,
Mhm.
we're the ones that are primarily spending the most money when it comes to nurture and care. And
Yep.
so people do need to consider that that female dollar is powerful, and begin the book talks about marketing to the female and how you do that successfully and the why. And so for those of you out here who have a business, whatever organization that you're leading, like it's significant to really think about that. And this is statistical data. This is not just my personal opinion. But yeah, there is power in the female dollar. And we need to understand as women, when we go into situations, even trying to get a higher wage, that we are
Mm-hmm.
valuable. And we need to, just like men, walk in a room with confidence and boldness, like I'm worth this and I should not make anything less. We need to do the same.
Yeah. Well, I know we
You
wanted to.
okay.
Oh, sorry. I just knew we
No,
wanted
go
to
ahead.
keep our conversation to a,
Yes.
Yeah.
specific time.
We
So
got
I
heated.
wanted to, I know, I wanted to kind of have this as the last thought. Do you
Yeah.
believe that this generation of women are we going to change metrics and analytics and data on if we're creating generational wealth and if we're seeing ourselves come out of poverty?
Yeah, I think so, Kenya. I think
Yeah.
so. Like I said earlier, with education and more women gaining that education and higher levels, like, more women are doctors than in the past, PhD
Mhm.
and MD. And so with that, we're making more money. And I think that that is going to trickle down to our children. And they are going to be, like you also said earlier, a generation that is going to change the game, especially for people of color. So
Let
I would
me
say yes.
add, I want to add a second part to that question. Are we
Hmm.
going to leave our men behind? Do you think our
You,
men are going to be left behind in that journey?
as far as our growth, like we're going to leave them
Yeah.
in a growth capacity. I think we
Yeah.
already are. I
Yeah.
think we've already. I don't think we leave them behind in a sense of companionship and love and
Yeah.
all of that. But when it comes to the numbers, we're starting to leave them behind. We're seeing more women in positions of leadership, which means they're making more money. We still have those gaps, but we've come a long
Mm-hmm.
way. So I would say yes, it's potential to do so.
I would say in the next 30 years, the shift will be changed. But
Yeah.
I think when it comes to women and money, women have always had money. They've just had their husband's money. But now they've always had money. They've always
Yeah.
had access. It wasn't theirs. It was their
Hmm.
husband's. So their status in the community and society was based on their husband's wealth,
Right.
right? That even goes back to the Elizabethan time, the Gilead age. Um, but you're talking about a very short that only in 1973 was a woman allowed to have a credit card from a bank. 1973. 1973. So for the first time in history, in 1973, a woman could actually own her own credit card in her own name. There is still a lot of work to be done. So
Hmm.
women have always had the power of the dollar. This time we're seeing a generation, our generation, generational X. Like we're generational X. We're the first generation that owned their own money, that was able to get their own credit card, their own bank account in their own names. Our mothers couldn't do that until 1973 or to the
Right.
early 70s. So our generation, the three of us, are the first generation to have a credit score of our own, to be held accountable for our own money. So we still have a lot of work to be done. Our daughters, it'll look different for them, a big difference for them.
Yeah.
So leaving our men behind will only be because they have forfeited their position to be left behind. So it's going to be up to them to align themselves as supporters to change a system, not because we want to be ahead of them. We just want equality and equity beside them. And I
Yeah.
think that's the conversation that I would like to see men of our generation accept, because here we go again, even though we are the first women in a generation to own money of our own, bank accounts of our own, credit line of
Right.
our own, status of our own,
Mhm.
investments of our own that other women did not have. Even if you go back and look at
Large
all
scale,
the
we
women,
are.
uh, how skilled we are. If you even go back to history, even some of the greatest women of history had to put their money in their husband's name or in an institution, and it had to be masked. So we still have a lot of work to be done. And I think in 30 years it's going to look different, but I'm excited to see it different. And I think we need to really go back to what you were saying, Kenya. The poverty metrics and creating generational wealth is a conversation. Going back to what Kimberly said, it has to start at the kitchen table, going
Yeah,
back to just the simple conversation
right.
of what that means to our girls and to our boys, that our sons are not feeling inferior when their wives to make money. And if one of the parents got to stay home, what's the big deal if it's the dad? what
Yeah.
big
Okay.
what what's the big
What is
difference?
whoever,
Yeah.
and those are
Whatever
some of the
makes sense to the
tough
family's success, right?
those are some of the tough
Mhm.
conversations that people will have to have and
Yeah.
be
Yeah,
open to what is going to be best for their family and what is going to be best for their economic freedom within their family. And so we
exactly.
hope that this show was insightful to those of you who watched The Color of Money, Empowering Women in Finance. We have so much more to say, obviously, but we're going to go ahead and end here. We want to thank all of you who watched. Thank you to our sponsors, future and past. And so, for anybody that would love to be a sponsor of the Love and Flow TV show, please reach out to us at info@coffeeandcollaborations.com. And we would love to get you the information so we can share what you have going on out here in these streets, these business streets. And we would love to be able to support that. So, once again, follow us on all social media at Love and Flow TV on Instagram and at Love and Flow TV Group on Facebook, and then at Coffee and Collaborations Media on YouTube. I want to thank my co-hosts, Kenya Thompson and Kimberly Woods McGee, for this beautiful, insightful, lively conversation. You all have an amazing rest of your evening, day, month. Financial Literacy Month is an opportunity to change the trajectory of your family starting today.
Indeed.
Every day is an opportunity, but why not start
Mm-hmm.
during Financial Literacy Month?
Let's see, Mark.
Have
Yeah.
a great night.
Good
Have a
night.
great